existential crisis of climate change and the multidimensional issues of erratic weather patterns, frequent disasters, pollution, waste management, biodiversity loss, disease outbreaks, that is disrupting lives and livelihoods on a daily basis. Discussions around this crisis cannot just be confined to one day, days like 5th June, which is marked as World Environment Day. According to the World Health Organization, healthier environments could prevent almost 1/4 of the global burden of disease. It further explains that 24% of all global deaths are linked to the environment, which is roughly about 13.7 million deaths a year. So on Banega Swasth India campaign, our theme is One Health, One Planet, One Future. So today we bring you this special show where we have with us some of the young UN-recognized climate warriors who are fighting for the climate cause and in their own way working towards protecting their environment, in fact, all our environment for a healthy life. Joining us on the show we have today Aditya Mukarji, young environmentalist, Garvita Gulhati, founder Why Waste, water conservationist. She's also Ashoka Young Changemaker, National Geographic Young Explorer. We have Reshma Anil Kumar, gender and climate justice activist, and Varsha Raikwar, radio jockey and climate activist. So much for joining us today. I would like to start with you first, Aditya. You started a battle against plastic straws by replacing them with eco-friendly straws. In fact, if you remember, we went, to the cafe where you started. We did that story way back then. And since then on, you've just gone on and on. You've helped remove approximately 26 million plastic straws and a few million other single-use plastics. So tell us about your initiative and how did it all start? Because it's going to be really encouraging for a lot of people to hear your story.
It started with a very simple start in 2018 at the age of 14. I was going through my social media and I came across this rather disturbing video of a wedge trying to pull a plastic straw out of a turtle's nose. The crying and bleeding of the turtle really impacted me, made me feel guilty for human actions. We take action without thinking about our consequences, without thinking about the consequences on other living forms. And I began to read about the problems of plastic pollution and waste disposal. And that's when I realized that it's a major problem. There are oceans and land masses of, littered with plastics, and these don't biodegrade. And I started talking to my mentor, Ms. Bharti Chaturvedi of Chintan, who was telling me the problems of waste management and waste pickers. And that's when I came upon this idea of tackling this problem of plastic pollution at its source. That is eradication of single-use plastics in the hospitality industry at its source.
So Garvita, like Aditya told us his journey, he started at the age of 13. Even you started really young at 13 and you've spoken about the water crisis in our country, which is again a huge challenge. What pushed you to talk about water conservation and eventually start your own organization, Why Waste?
Thanks, Ambika, for that question. And of course, very deeply inspired by what Aditya does and so excited that, we're this huge community of folks who started at such a young age. And I think the key to that has really been some of the experiences that we had personally. And for me, when I sort of trace back and think of what was it, right, there were a lot of things. I think I grew up in a family that was incredibly conscious, always thinking about, finishing the food on their plates and the water in their glasses. But there were a couple of instances, I think, that pushed me, I'd say, over the edge. And I just sort of quickly recount them, right? So I was on a trip in Ahmedabad in Gujarat with my family, and we were visiting one of the step wells. And as we were sort of navigating the place and enjoying, the scenic beauty of a step well which was completely dry, a little girl ran up to me and instead of she had slightly tattered clothes, her face was worn, and I thought she might ask me for money or some food or something like that. Instead she asked me for the water in the bottle in my hands, and I think that moved me to my core. I started reading more about the water crisis. I started, because that was for the first time I realized that this is also something that,
Yeah.
there is a lack of.
And it is a basic right, unfortunately, but still people,
Exactly.
yeah.
Water is the universal elixir of life, and yet today there are so many people who face the lack of it. Started reading more about the problem, didn't know where to start because the water crisis in itself is humongous. And that's when my environmental education teacher at school, she was taking a session, and during that session we learned that 14 million liters of water gets wasted every year simply in the water that we leave behind in our glasses at restaurants. And I was immediately reminded of that little girl for whom a few sips of water absolutely changed her day, and something that we so, callously waste. And I think that was really the beginning and the trigger point for me.
Amazing. I mean, the same thing. I mean, something which moves you, right? वर्षा, मैं आपसे अगर ये सवाल पूछूं कि जैसे आदित्य ने कहीं ना कहीं देखा कि वो टर्टल के गले में स्ट्रॉ फंस गया और तब उसने इस पर काम शुरू किया, प्लास्टिक पर। गर्विता ने भी देखा कि एक बच्चा पानी के लिए तरस रहा था, तो तब पानी की, सबकी मतलब अलग अलग एक स्टोरी थी। आपने वर्षा, जब आप बड़े हो रहे थे, आपने क्लाइमेट चेंज के बारे कैसे सीखा और कैसे सोचा कि हाँ मैं इस पर काम करना चाहती हूँ, क्योंकि आप इस पर बहुत अहम काम कर रहे हैं, बहुत अहम भूमिका निभा रहे हैं।
मेरे पापा एक छोटे से फार्मर हैं और उनको शुरू से ही मैंने देखा कि वो किस तरह से काम करते हैं और किस तरह से फसल दिन ब दिन उनकी जो बढ़ती थी वो कम होती चली गई। तो मुझे लगा कि ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है, तो देखा कि पानी की कमी हो रही है, बारिश ठीक से नहीं हो रही है। तब मुझे लगा कि जो कंफ्यूजन हम लोगों के बीच क्रिएट हो रही है कि हमें लगता है कि ये जो बारिश नहीं हो रही है वो सिर्फ उसकी वजह भगवान होते हैं या प्रकृति की देन होते हैं, हमारा उनसे कोई लेना देना नहीं होता है। तो इस तरह से मुझे लगा कि इन चीजों के बारे में मुझे जानना है कि आखिर जो मैंने बचपन में, जब मैं बहुत छोटी थी तब मैंने देखा था कि मेरे घर में काफी सारे ऐसे अनाज हुआ करते थे, गेहूं, चना, मटर, इन सब के ढेर लगे हुए करते थे। लेकिन आज हम देख रहे हैं कि हमारे यहाँ खुद भी खाने को नहीं हो पा रहा है और साथ में पापा को अपनी आजीविका चलाने के लिए उनको घर से बाहर काम करने के लिए भी जाना पड़ रहा है। तो मुझे लगा कि सीखना है मुझे इसके बारे में कि जलवायु परिवर्तन अगर हो रहा है तो वो क्या है।
Reshma, let me ask you, you've engaged in working towards climate with the perspective of gender equality, which is very, very important, but tell us, how important is it to look at climate change together with gender equality goals, I mean, especially if you're looking at SDG Goal 5?
Even in our communities, it is very much visible that climate justice disproportionately affects females. Yes. So, for example, if we look into education, there are a lot of educational institutions and educational materials which we lose access to due to climate disasters. And when that happens, due to the belief that education of females is comparatively less important as that of males, it is females who usually get cut off from the education process.
Absolutely. I think you put that really well. Reshma, we've been listening to Garvita, Aditya, in fact, all you youngsters, Varsha, I mean, each one of you are so motivating as I speak with you all. Education, of course, bringing about a behavior change, spreading awareness is very important. So tell us, how do you educate people about climate change from the lens of gender equality? And do share some examples, for our viewers, because that helps.
Climate justice, the definition of it itself says like fair and equitable division, sharing, and distribution of the benefits, burdens, and responsibilities related to climate change. And that in itself talks about how fair it needs to be it good or bad. And it's pretty much clear from that that gender equality is a part of the whole that we call as climate action. And climate justice pioneers climate action. Personal stories kind of pick at the empathy of people, and it kind of builds bridges between the most farthest and diverse of people and bring them and empower them to share their own personal stories as a part of the movement and make them aspire towards achieving these goals of gender equality or climate change or climate justice or the intersection of it.
अगर मैं आपसे एक सवाल पूछूं, जो क्लाइमेट चेंज का इम्पैक्ट है, जो उसका असर है, बहुत अलग है ग्रामीण मतलब रूरल एरियाज में और अर्बन एरियाज में, फर्क है। क्या अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि जो स्पेसिफिक इश्यूज हैं जो क्लाइमेट क्राइसिस के जो इम्पैक्ट है वो लाइफ और लाइवलीहुड्स पे लोगों पर कैसे पड़ रहा है, जैसे आपने बताया आपके अपने घर में आपके पापा कुछ और काम कर रहे हैं, तो क्या इम्पैक्ट वर्षा आप हमारे साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं?
बुंदेलखंड को, जहाँ लोग अपने खेतों में बहुत ही अच्छी तरीके से रहते थे, फसल समय से लेते थे, लेकिन जब जैसे ही ये जून का महीना आता है, मई जून का महीना आता है, तब लोग एकदम पूरा गांव खाली करके चले जाते हैं। आप इस समय अगर हमारे बुंदेलखंड में आएंगे तो लोगों के घर में लोग नहीं बल्कि ताले लगे हुए मिलेंगे, क्योंकि वो पूरी तरह से खेती पर निर्भर होते हैं। लेकिन जैसे ही उनको लगता है कि अब पानी की कोई आशा नहीं है, और हमारे आसपास जो जंगल हुआ करते थे पहले बहुत सारे, वो अब यहाँ पे देखने को नहीं मिलते हैं, जहाँ बुंदेलखंड की खूबसूरती जिसको कहा जाता था, आज वो हमारे यहाँ से बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से गायब हो चुके हैं। पीने के पानी के लिए हम लोग कई बार पूरा पूरा दिन निकल जाता है, तब जाकर एक डिब्बा हमें सिर्फ पीने का पानी मिला करता था। तो इम्पैक्ट तो ऐसा देखा जाए बहुत सारे इम्पैक्ट है, और सबसे ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है कि लोग पलायन जब करते हैं तो उनके बच्चे जो है वो अशिक्षित रह जा रहे हैं, उन्हें शिक्षा का कोई मिल ही नहीं पा रहा है, कुछ भी ऐसी चीज जिससे वो पढ़ाई कर पाए।
माइग्रेशन एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज देखा जाता है, क्योंकि वो एक जगह से दूसरी जगह जाते हैं, तो एजुकेशन जो बहुत बहुत जरूरी है वो कहीं ना कहीं इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, जो हम देखते नहीं है। नीति आयोग ने भी जैसे 2018 में कहा है कि हमारे देश में जो पानी की किल्लत है, जो शॉर्टेज है, ये बहुत बड़ा क्राइसिस है, और 600 मिलियन लोग ऐसे हैं जो इसको मतलब इस क्राइसिस को देख रहे हैं, मतलब जी रहे हैं रोज। आप यूएन के यंग क्लाइमेट लीडर हैं, आप एसडीजी 6 के उस गोल की तरफ चैंपियन कर रहे हैं, उसके लिए काम कर रहे हैं, जो क्लीन पानी और सैनिटेशन है। क्या स्टेप्स आपको चाहिए, आपको लगता है हमारे देश को चाहिए कि ताकि हम ये वाटर जो क्राइसिस है, इसकी जो शॉर्टेज है, हम इसे हैंडल कर सके, इसके साथ डील कर सके?
जो नैरेटिव, जो कहानी हमें मालूम है पानी के शॉर्टेज की, अभी हम जब भी पानी की शॉर्टेज की बात करते हैं या सोचते हैं तो हम क्या सोचते हैं? हम या तो एक रिवर के बारे में सोचते हैं जो बहुत पोल्यूटेड हो, या फिर हम ऐसे सोचते हैं एक विलेज में जहाँ पे औरतें और लड़कियाँ बहुत चल रही हैं सिर्फ एक बकेट पानी लाने के लिए। बट हम कभी ये नहीं सोचते कि वो लोग क्यों इस हालत में हैं। वो लोग इस हालत में इसलिए हैं क्योंकि हम जो शहर में रहते हैं पानी को ओवर कंज्यूम करते हैं, ओवर यूज़ करते हैं। अ सिंगल पेयर ऑफ जीन्स दैट यू माइट बी वेयरिंग can consume up to 4,000 liters of water to manufacture. I think the goal is one for us to think more innovatively in terms of how can we produce more consciously, and it's not just for water, right? Today everything that we have around us not just comes with a not just comes with a price tag, but it comes with a water tag, it comes with a carbon tag, right? The cost of the product is a lot larger than what we actually see or that we actually bear. And so I think the goal really here is for those ecosystems to come together. And I'm always reminded of the example of how we as a community, and by community I mean people of the world, were able to ban plastic straws.
And I think what you rightly said, in fact, all of you have been saying time and again, it's about the behavior change. It's about making those right choices. Aditya, you also believe in individual social responsibility, and you've said that refuse if you cannot reuse, to leave the world a little better place that you found it. What kinds of actions do you take in your daily life to, stick to this goal?
I take very simple and small steps, such as I don't use single-use plastics. I carry my own water bottle when I'm going out, carry a metal straw in my pocket in case I go to a coffee shop, or when I'm going to a Starbucks or a cafe coffee day, I either use the ceramic mugs that they have, or I carry my own travel mugs so that I'm not using those plastic-lined cups of theirs. And when I go grocery shopping, going to the local shop, I carry my own jute bag. So I'm not, even if they're giving me a environmentally friendly bag, I'm not taking it because I'm not going to be able to reuse it maybe. So I refuse it in that manner. When I used to go to school, I used to carry my own steel tiffin and steel water bottles. I use bamboo toothbrushes, shampoo bars, and most importantly, I use public transport wherever and whenever possible. The other thing is segregation of waste at home. I segregate into 7 categories. But it's wet waste, dry waste, paper, metal, plastic, e-waste, and medical waste. And we compost our wet waste in the colony, and I go and give my plastic waste to a particular recycler to ensure that it's actually taken care of, actually recycled.
और सबको कहीं ना कहीं जो हम अभी बातचीत कर रहे हैं, आप सारे जिसे कह रहे हैं, जो कि जरूरी है कि कहीं ना कहीं इस पर एजुकेशन हो, अवेयरनेस हो, और जैसे जो आपने ये बात कही कि रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेनी पड़ेगी, ये नहीं कह सकते हमने नहीं किया, क्योंकि आगे वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए, फॉर फ्यूचर जनरेशंस, आप लोगों को एजुकेट करते हैं रेडियो के माध्यम से बुंदेलखंड में, मध्य प्रदेश में क्लाइमेट चेंज के बारे, इसके बारे में बताइए, क्योंकि एक जो अवेयरनेस होता है उसके लिए आप बहुत बड़ा काम कर रहे हैं। कैसे कैसे शुरू हुआ ये?
उसके लिए हम लोगों ने एक बैरो भौजी का शो बनाया। बुंदेलखंड में भौजी मतलब भाभी होती है जो बहरी होती है, तो बैरो भौजी, तो उनका एक शो बनाया जो सिर्फ 5 मिनट का होता था, और उस 5 मिनट में वो भौजी इतना इंटरेस्टिंग उस पूरे 30 मिनट के प्रोग्राम को बनाया करती थी। और अच्छी बात उसमें ये थी कि बैरो भौजी सिर्फ और सिर्फ क्लाइमेट चेंज को लेकर बात किया करती थी, कि उनके जो परिवार वाले हैं, उनके जो परिवार वाले हैं वो कभी कभी गलती करते थे कि भाई समय से जो बारिश होती थी अब नहीं हो रही है, या फसल में रासायनिक का उपयोग करते हैं। तो भौजी जो है, भाभी जो है, वो उनको सही दिशा दिखाती थी, साथ में उसका असर भी बताती कि अगर हम रासायनिक का इस्तेमाल करेंगे अपने खेतों पे तो उससे हमारे स्वास्थ्य पर, हमारे पर्यावरण पर, हमारी मिट्टी पर क्या असर पड़ेगा।
Aditya, in July 2020, you started a campaign, Forests of Hope, an urban forestry initiative to grow 195 native, fruit trees for the children of the 195 nations of the world. Tell us about this initiative and, the challenges.
It's a global project, Forests of Hope, which is to grow one tree for children and youth of every country. So 195 trees, and the main aim being to grow native and fruit-bearing trees, because they are the easiest to grow and the easiest to nurture, because the point of a tree plantation campaign doesn't need to be just planting trees, but has to take care and nurture them for the highest survival rate possible. And for this, I partnered with various institutions within India and outside to ensure that they were planted, they were taken care of for at least 3 years, so that they can have a chance of survival. And if the saplings died, they could be replaced with new saplings. We've been able to plant over 45 such forests, which is approximately 9,000 trees. Afforestation is a benefit. It can be an effective measure, but under very few circumstances, such as not only plantation but also nurturing of trees is important for success. Then native species, we can't bring about invasive species like we have eucalyptus trees in the Punjab and the hill regions which are destructive to the ecosystem. We can't have those, and this can't be done as a thing after deforestation or tree felling.
Yeah.
Because even 100 saplings can never make up for a mature tree in way it helps reduce carbon emissions. So it has to be done. We have to stop deforestation and use reforestation of in areas where which is being denuded of forests. So it has to be done together.
It's more of a people's movement, and I guess you guys are really doing that. I mean, for you and me, you're representing the responsibility which you'll have. In fact, you also recently published a sustainability story. It's a collection of stories that talk about environmental issues and inspire children to be the change. Take us through one such story quickly, and the environmental problem and the challenges it talks about.
There's a creature cafe and there's a people's parlor. This is the first story of the book. And the people's parlor is overusing water, so the creature's cafe doesn't have it. And so the young animal at the creature's cafe questions this, right? Why do I not have access to this water? And learns that it's because the people's parlor is overusing and overconsuming that water. And then very, very smartly, innovatively, creatively realizes that I can actually make a difference towards this, comes up with a way to share water amongst the two places. And that's the goal, right? That's the goal, to make people realize that it's young people and small ideas that can make a difference.
How we were right now, Garvita, we were talking about, taking, walking miles and miles to get water, or even, to use a toilet. It's the women who are going out. So definitely the impact is more. What are your specific learnings, if I can ask you, of the impact of climate change on the LGBTQ community?
First of all, we already know that due to climate change, recently a lot of people are losing their livelihoods, and there have been an increase of climate disasters due to, of course, population explosion is a huge thing in that. And due to all these factors, a major thing that has been happening is gender-based violence.
Yes.
And GBV, especially against the trans community. And when we look into communities where climate disasters are hugely affected, trans people, just because they are too different for the cis heteronormative community, they are seen as bad omens in some communities. And because of the fact that they're seen as bad omens, they are considered the cause of these disasters rather than climate change. And this kind of social stigma ends up restricting a lot of their social opportunities and infrastructure. And because of that, in extreme but common cases, a lot of people end up having to leave their homes before they even have enough education or skill to enter into the community, into the society.
At 18 today, Aditya, you're one of the young, 17 young climate leaders for the UN India campaign, We the Change. How big is this responsibility, and how do you plan to steer the climate action movement in India? Because definitely it's a big responsibility.
In my opinion, no social movement or even the climate action movement can ever be truly successful unless the change isn't started at the grassroots level of society. And this is where I want to help change the use and throw behavior of people and make them environmentally friendly, reconnect them with their roots, with their heritage by taking simple and small steps.
किसी भी तरह किसी को लोगों को अवेयरनेस या उनको हम किसी चीज के प्रेरित कर सके, इनकरेज कर सके, वो बहुत बहुत जरूरी है. आप सब हमारे साथ जुड़े. Thank you so much, Aditya, Garvita, Reshma, and Varsha. It was, wonderful to speak to you youngsters, who really are working. I think it's time we all step up, we do our bit, and we protect our environment, not only for us, but for the future generations. Thank you all so much for watching.